Camsy was a beautiful girl with a kind heart and a quiet spirit. But life had not been kind to her. She lost both of her parents when she was just a little girl. Since then, life became very hard. She had no family, no food, no money, just herself. People in the village often admired her beauty, but no one came close to help her. Every day she woke up hungry and went to bed in tears. Camsy didn't beg. She didn't steal. Instead, she would go into the forest and cry to her ancestors. That was the only place she found peace. That was where she believed her parents could still hear her. One quiet afternoon, the sun was hot, and her stomach was empty. Her body was weak, but she stood up and walked to the forest as usual. She had no slippers on her feet, but she didn't mind. That day felt different. The wind was stronger, the birds were silent. Even the trees looked still. Camsy walked deep into the forest, to a place where an old tree stood tall and wide like a giant. Her mother used to say that spirits lived in big trees. Camsy knelt under the tree, closed her eyes tightly, and placed both hands on the ground. "Mother, Father, are you there? I am hungry. I have nothing. Please help me. I don't want to die." She stayed silent for a while. Her eyes were still shut and the forest was quiet. But slowly, something changed. The air around her felt warmer. She could feel something, like the gentle touch of a hand on her shoulder. Her heart began to beat faster. "Mother," she whispered again, opening her eyes slowly. Right in front of her, something strange happened. There was no hand, no figure. But where the dry leaves had covered the ground before, now lay fresh, golden corn. The smell was sweet and rich, like roasted corn and honey. Camsy was confused at first. She looked around. No one was there. The forest was still. But the corn was real. She picked one up and tasted it. Her eyes widened. She had never tasted anything like it in her life. It melted in her mouth like soft butter, yet it was strong enough to fill her belly. She began to cry, not because she was scared, but because she knew her parents had hurt her. She picked the corn with joy and ran home. Every bite of that corn gave her strength. She ate it slowly, carefully, and somehow the corn never ran out. For weeks she survived on just that corn. It didn't spoil, it didn't shrink. It kept her full and strong. But one day the last cob was gone. Camsy sat on her bed and stared at the empty plate. Fear returned. Hunger returned. The silence in her room felt loud again. But she didn't panic. She knelt quietly, just like she did in the forest, and placed her hands on the floor. "Mother, Father, I know you are here. Please don't leave me. I need you again." As soon as she said those words, a cold breeze moved through her room, even though the window was shut. Her eyes were still closed, but she felt them. The presence, the peace, the love. She opened her eyes slowly and gasped. Her small room was filled with corn, golden, glowing, fresh corn from the spirit world. It was on the bed, the floor, the table, everywhere. Camsy stood in the middle of her room, staring at the corn that had filled every corner. She could barely believe her eyes. She picked up one and held it close to her heart, whispering, "Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Papa." After a moment, she lit a small fire outside her hut and placed one corn on the flame to roast it. The sweet smell began to rise into the air, richer than anything the village had ever known. The smoke carried a powerful aroma, like roasted honey and butter mixed with fresh earth. It was so strong birds flew toward it. Even dogs sat outside her compound, sniffing the air. Just then, a young man named Ebuka, who was passing by on his way to the stream, stopped. His nose twitched. He raised his head, sniffed the air again, and followed the scent like someone under a spell. He walked into Camsy's compound and called out, "Camsy, please, what is that smell? What are you cooking?" Camsy turned, holding the roasted corn in her hand. unsure what to say. "Just corn," she replied quietly. Ibuka stepped closer. "Just corn? This smells like something from heaven. Can I have a bite?" Camsy hesitated, then broke the corn in half and gave him a piece. He took one bite and stopped in his tracks. His eyes widened, his mouth opened. Then he closed his eyes and chewed slowly. "Camsy, where did you get this?" he asked, licking his fingers. Camsy looked away. She couldn't tell him the truth. He would think she was mad, or worse, a witch. I found it in the forest," she lied. "The forest?" he asked again, surprised. "Where in the forest?" She pointed randomly. "Just near the big tree." Ibuka couldn't keep it to himself. He ran back to the village, shouting, "I just tasted the sweetest corn in the world. From Camsy's house, she got it from the forest." By evening, Ibuka had told his friends. His friends told their parents. Their parents told other villagers. A group of young men rushed into the forest to look for the special corn. They searched everywhere, near trees, under bushes, even climbed hills. But they found nothing. Back in the village, people started trooping to Camsy's house. They knocked on her door, some begging, some offering money. "Please, Camsy, I heard you have a special corn. Can I buy just one? I'll pay you double. Please, my son is sick. Maybe your corn can help." Camsy stood there shocked. She didn't know what to do. But she looked at the corn still filling her room. Her ancestors had given her more than enough. She smiled softly and began to sell it, one by one. The corn never finished. For every one she sold, another appeared later. Soon she had enough money to buy new clothes, good food, and repair her old house. Her skin began to glow. Her body grew stronger. People no longer saw her as a poor orphan. Now they called her the wealthy maiden of Umuiz. But not everyone was happy. Amara, the wife of the king, watched everything with sharp eyes. Her heart burned with jealousy. How could a poor girl like Camsy suddenly become the most talked-about person in the village? Even the king had mentioned her name one morning. "This Camsy girl, I hear she now feeds the poor with her corn. We should invite her to the palace," the king had said. Amara's eyes narrowed. She forced a smile and replied, "Maybe. We will see." But deep inside, she was boiling. How could a nobody steal her spotlight? Amara wore gold and silk, but nobody praised her like they praised Camsy. Something had to be wrong. So she called two of her most trusted palace maids, Adaizi and Uju. "I want you to go to Camsy's house," Amara said coldly. "Watch her. Follow her. Find out how she gets that corn. I don't care if she hides it in the bush or brings it from her dreams. Bring me the truth." The two maids nodded quickly and left. That evening they arrived at Camsy's home pretending to be customers. "Please, we just want to buy some corn," they said sweetly. Camsy smiled politely and gave them each one roasted corn. But the maids didn't leave immediately. They hid behind a tree after eating, watching her every move. They waited and waited, but nothing strange happened. Camsy did not go to the forest. She did not talk to spirits. She only swept her compound, roasted corn, and greeted her neighbors. After 2 days of spying, the maids returned to the palace, confused and empty-handed. "My queen," Adais said, kneeling, "we found nothing." "She is just a simple girl roasting corn," Uju added. Amara's eyes blazed with anger. "Number, that corn is not ordinary, and I will find out the truth, even if it means dragging it out of her with fire." That same evening, under the orange sky, Amara left the palace in her shining wrapper and heavy gold bangles. She called a meeting with a few of her close friends behind the old market square. "My fellow women," she said, lowering her voice, "a nobody has come to steal our shine in this village." "She must be stopped," shouted Neka, a pot-bellied woman who always tried to impress the king's wives. "Yes, are we going to fold our arms and watch Camsy take everything from us?" Amara asked again. "No," the women roared. "We must stop her," another added, pounding her fist into her palm. They all turned to look at a slim woman in a faded blue wrapper. Mercy. She lived just 3 huts away from Camsy. "Mercy," Amara said with a sly smile, "you live close to her. You see everything. We want you to find out where she's buying this magical corn. Watch her. Bring us the truth." Mercy nodded without question. "I will do it." From that day, Mercy began to spy on Camsy. She pretended to be a kind neighbor, helping her sweep, bringing firewood, sometimes even roasting corn together. But her eyes were sharp. Her ears listened carefully. Every day she watched. Every night she listened. Weeks passed, nothing strange. Camsy never left the village. She didn't go to any special place. She was always in her small compound, helping the needy, smiling at children, roasting corn. Mercy became confused. She began to think maybe there was no secret. Until one fateful night, the moon was full and the stars danced in the dark sky. Mercy couldn't sleep. Something told her to check on Camsy, so she tiptoed through the bush and crawled to the side of Camsy's window. She hid behind a pile of yam stems and peeked in through the crack in the wall. Inside, she saw something that nearly stopped her heart. Camsy was kneeling down, eyes closed, lips moving softly in prayer. Then suddenly, the room began to glow. In seconds, golden corn started appearing from the air, bouncing gently to the floor, filling baskets, tables, even spilling into the corner of the room. Mercy gasped. She didn't wait to see more. She picked her slippers, ran barefoot through the night, and burst into the Owl palace, breathing heavily. "My queen! My queen!" she shouted. Amara came out in her nightgown, confused and angry. "Mercy, are you mad? Why are you shouting like a goat in labor?" Mercy knelt quickly. "My queen, I saw it with my 2 eyes. That girl, Camsy, is a witch." Amara's eyes lit up. "What?" "Yes." She knelt down and closed her eyes, and then corn filled her room, just like that. Amara's mouth opened in shock, but deep down, she was pleased. "So that's how she has been feeding this village," Amara whispered to herself. "A witch in disguise." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. Her heart raced with thoughts. She finally saw a chance to bring Camsy down. The next evening, she dressed in her finest royal attire and cooked the king's favorite meal, orphan with fresh fish and pounded yam. The king sat at the royal table, happily devouring the meal. "My queen," he said with a smile, "whenever you cook like this, it means you want something." Amara giggled softly. "Your Majesty, you know me well." The king dropped his spoon, wiped his hands, and leaned back. "Speak." Amara smiled, but her eyes were dangerous. "My king, I bring you a warning, a matter that concerns the safety of our village." The king sat upright. "What is it?" Amara leaned closer. "It's about the girl called Camsy." The king, though smitten by Camsy's beauty, sat coldly on his throne the next morning when she was summoned to the palace square. Hundreds of villagers had gathered, whispering, pointing, and staring at the girl who once fed them sweet corn, now accused of witchcraft. Camsy stood tall. Her wrapper was clean, her eyes clear, her face calm, even though fear danced around her like wind. "My king," she said with strength in her voice, "you called me?" The king looked at her for a long time. He remembered her smile, her kindness, the way she once gave corn to hungry children freely. But Amara's words echoed in his head. "Camsy," the chief elder stepped forward, "you have been accused of witchcraft, that the food you give us comes from dark powers. What do you have to say for yourself?" Camsy turned slowly and looked at the faces in the crowd. These were people who once knocked at her door, praised her corn, and blessed her name. "I am not a witch," she said calmly. "I am only a girl who called out to her ancestors, and they heard me." They laughed. "Ancestors? Who are your ancestors? Spirits that pour corn from the sky?" Camsy was silent. The king shook his head. "Camsy, even I made inquiries. I searched the whole forest for your corn. I found nothing. I wanted to make you my wife. But how can I marry someone who may destroy my people?" Camsy blinked slowly, pain hidden in her eyes. "So you too do not believe me?" The king looked away. The chief priest raised his staff. "By the laws of this land, a witch that feeds the people with unknown powers must be put to death. That is the judgment." Camsy took a deep breath. "If you must kill me, then allow me say something before I die." The crowd went quiet. "From today, may this land never lack corn again. May corn grow where my tears have touched, where my body will fall, and may the sweetness of my gift remain, even when I'm gone." Another elder laughed. "See how witches speak nonsense." The king looked at her one last time, but said nothing. Strong men came forward. They tied her hands and dragged her to the riverside, where a pile of dry firewood had been arranged. The crowd followed like a festival had begun. They poured oil on the wood and stood back. As they dragged Camsy forward, something happened. Corn began to sprout under her feet. Fast, green, healthy stalks with golden tips. The crowd gasped. The king stood up from his seat. "Stop!" But it was too late. The fire had started, and the flames roared. The men tried to pull her out, but when they reached into the fire, they brought out her dead body. They brought her out, lifeless. Her eyes were closed. Her hands rested by her side. She didn't fight, she didn't scream. She died the same way she lived, peacefully, silently, and with grace. The men who carried her couldn't stop crying. Some of them had bought corn from her just the day before. They remembered how she always smiled, how she greeted everyone, how she gave free corn to children and widows. And now, she was gone. But as they carried her body through the village, something unbelievable happened. Wherever her body touched, corn began to grow. At first, it was just one stalk, then two, then a field. Green, fresh, shining corn sprang up from the ground like a miracle. Even places that had never grown food before were filled with it. The people began to murmur. The elders looked at one another. One of them whispered, "Did we just kill the gift of our land?" And the king tore his royal garment. He wept like a baby and walked behind the body as they moved it toward the palace. They laid her down in the palace courtyard, and the moment her body touched the ground, corn sprouted from underneath. The guards fell to their knees. The maidens cried. The whole palace was silent except for the sound of wind rustling through the corn leaves. The king touched her cold hand and said in a shaky voice, "Forgive us, please, forgive us." That night he made a royal decree. "Let her be honored forever. Let no child in this land go to bed hungry again, and let her name be spoken before mine in every feast and harvest." And from that day forward, the land never lacked corn again. Other villagers started coming from far and near to buy corn from them. Merchants came with bags of gold. Kings sent their servants to trade cattle, spices, and even fine clothes, just to taste the miracle corn. Their village, once small and quiet, became the center of wealth. Roads were built, markets expanded, children no longer cried from hunger, mothers cooked with joy in their hearts, fathers stopped migrating to distant lands in search of food, and in the middle of all this blessing was Camsy. Her name was on everyone's lips. Even little children who never saw her alive played games singing her praises. Fathers told their sons, "Never forget the girl who gave her life for us." Mothers named their daughters after her: Nwakamsi, Kamsochi, Chikamsi. Generations came and went, but her story remained strong. Her grave under the tall Iroko tree became a sacred place. People came there to pray for healing, for rain, for children, for peace. And many said their prayers were answered. Because of Camsy's sacrifice, the land was never poor again. Her death became the seed that birthed a harvest of abundance. The lesson: true greatness is not in how much you take, but in how much you give. Camsy gave everything, without asking for praise, reward, or power. She was hated, envied, and falsely accused, but even in death she blessed the very people who condemned her. Envy destroys, sacrifice builds, and in the end, history remembers the one who gave, not the one who envied. Let Camsy's story teach us this: when you see someone shining, don't dim their light, join it. Because sometimes that light is the very miracle your land has been waiting for.